Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Lage, and I'm a clinical social worker at the Child Mind Institute. We're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources that is all available online and accessible to everyone. You can learn more about the resources that we have available for families during the coronavirus crisis, including telehealth evaluations, treatment, and other resources by visiting childmind.org/coronavirus. Today, I'd like to talk to you about sculpting your new normal and answer your questions on this as well as anything else you're wondering about. Post your questions in the feed, and we'll also post helpful links to resources on childmind.org as well as details about our next Facebook Live. Remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we look through your questions daily. So I'd like to dive in and just talk a little bit about the topic before I answer some questions that we received earlier. I really wanted to just kind of touch base on what the new normal is, and that looks different for everyone. Since times are changing, things are changing daily. We don't really know what the new normal looks like, but we sort of can sculpt it our own way as far as where we're at. For us in California, we have been on shelter in place for over a month now. So, it's good to reevaluate in this time. We still don't know when that might be over. There's always deadlines that are changing. And so it's good to sort of reevaluate where I'm at. I think it's helpful for myself as well. And there's no one way to do this. So that's why I think that it's important that we reevaluate and that we're thinking about, well, where are we right now versus where we were before, or whatever the case is, and not thinking too much into the future, but where are we today? So the thing about these changes too is they're not forever. They're meant to be temporary, and we're just adapting to a very unusual schedule. So figuring out what's good for us and figuring out what works for us is important, because we also figure out what doesn't work for us and doesn't work for our kids, doesn't work for our partners. And we're shifting roles, we're shifting goals. And so things can be really unstable and unpredictable. So to start, I just have three sort of things that I wanted to bring up as far as resculpting or just sculpting your new normal. One of those being to know your resources. The second thing is looking at things from a perspective of resilience, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means later. And then three, just adapting to the constant adjustment. So having an adaptable attitude is really important at this time. So first and foremost, knowing your resources. I am a social worker, so just resources in general are something that I'm always collecting, not only for my clients, but for myself. So, I mean, collecting resources on food, shelter, financial assistance, mental health resources. I want to know things about entertainment. What sort of resources are there too? Things about the outdoors. And it's more helpful for me. And I think when I'm speaking with my clients, it's more helpful to think about what we can do versus what we can't. So when you're thinking about food, I mean, there might be tons of places in your community that are offering different food banks, drive-through sort of food assistance. There's also some shelter that you can look into if you are having, sort of you're thinking about maybe your security and shelter right now is being compromised, or if you are, having issues with the landlord or something like that. There are some different resources out there that can be helpful for you trying to figure out what's your next step for your family. Financial assistance. There's also lots of different places that are trying their best to give out. I mean, I spoke with a school the other day that is giving out gift cards, even if it's just a couple dollars for groceries or a couple dollars for gas, things of that nature. Those are some things that we have to find and sort of put an effort into looking for. When it comes to food, shelter, financial assistance, we are at Child Mind, really focused on those mental health resources and providing those to you all. We have things for parents, we have things for your kids. If you're a teacher, if you are any sort of educator, mental health resources can be tailored toward you, and those are some things you can just find. I'm thinking of some entertainment resources. So, having a movie party and how you can use that through any sort of Skype call, or you can use that through just a video call, or having a chat box while you watch a movie together. There's resources out there that will enable you. I know that there's some things on Instagram where you can watch some concerts, actually lives of your favorite artists. That could be really helpful too, in the nice time to sort of see what your favorite, sort of people are doing, and music that you're interested in. Two, there's lots of playlists out there. I think that is a resource too. Some feel good playlists, and heartfelt ones that may get us moving and helping us feel motivated. Music does a lot there. A resource for me personally has been essential oils. I am in love with essential oils. I think eucalyptus is amazing, and it helps me with stress even before this. And so I've really been, I get excited turning on my diffuser. And that's a resource, just knowing sort of the things that do make you feel good. Outdoors resources, I think too, just referring to the CDC and what the requirements are for your state, for your city, for your community, whether or not that be resources on masks or having some handy hand sanitizer with you. Those are really important resources to know. Also, there might be some times that there's an open trail or something like that you can utilize. These are just resources that maybe we don't think about, but that can be really helpful to even bring just a little bit of ease to our day. The second thing is just looking at things from perspective of resilience. And so resilience is something that I talk a lot about with my clients, and particularly I work with school-age children who are in maybe elementary or middle school. And so it's really, really great to speak with them and get their perspective on things, because a lot of the time it is, I'm bored, or I want to be doing something else, but another thing is, I'm talking to my mom a lot more, or I'm building a relationship with my sibling that we don't really, get time to talk with one another, or even spend time or want to, in the past. So resilience is not about trying to make sure bad things don't happen. Resilience is when it's about response, and sort of it's about what we do when bad things happen. So, we don't need to assume that we need to be calm and serene every time something happens. We want to strive to be perfect in this area, but that's not the reality, and I don't think that is certainly helpful. We want to figure out how we can emotionally respond to something, and sort of change the way we might be thinking about some things. Childmind.org has some great tips on cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, and it is really great to sort of think about your thoughts. And that's actually one of the workshops I do with kids at schools, is we think about our thoughts and understand our thoughts. What kind of thoughts are we having? We have thinking traps. We may be getting ourselves into thinking patterns that are not healthy for us. So it's the way we file things away in our head that we want to forget, or something like that. I think of it this way as an example, is having tools. And I'm thinking about the other day, I needed to build something, and I didn't have a screwdriver. I completely didn't think about the fact that I would need a screwdriver, right? And so then I had to put in effort to go get that. It's the same thing, I think, with things. We can come into some obstacles, but it's about having those tools, about bringing out those tools, and having a toolbox is really important. And so that's the skills like mindfulness that we might be talking to you about, self-care, some really important things that you're able to bring out when there are times of adversity, or things are unpredictable, or there's something traumatic happening. So as a social worker, I work with a multitude of systems. That's family, school. I work with religious affiliations and peers, and thinking about the workplace and your neighborhood and community. So I always think about sort of how those in turn develop into your mental wellness, your emotional wellness, your social wellness. And those are just some things to think about. If you are tuning in, I just want to go ahead and reintroduce myself. My name is Catherine Legion. I am a clinical social worker at the Child Mind Institute. Today we're talking about sculpting your new normal, and we have some questions that I'm going to be answering soon. So stay tuned for those. But I wanted to go back to my last point before we get to some questions. Feel free to add any questions if you liked to talk about this topic or anything else. But this one is just about having an adaptable attitude. And I say just, but it is no small threat. It is completely understandable that this is not an easy thing to do. And I think that what I really hope, and a lot of this too is for the kids that I work with, who's missing out on graduations or missing out on social time or having to spend time with their families, that it's a little bit harder with their relationship with them. I think of this as the most rewarding thing that can come of this is positive change, and that if that means that you're talking to your family more after this, if that means that you are really thinking about how your body works. I've been sitting a lot and I've been just trying to figure out different ways to stretch, which has been new. I mean, I do yoga, but I'm like, these are some more, different ways that I can do this. I will be able to take that outside of this. Or if I'm thinking about my, kid relationships with kids and, what about my relationship with my partner? What about my relationship with my extended family? These things can have a positive change afterwards, but it really depends on what you're doing now. So while your situation can be different from families across the board, if you're working from home, if you lost your job, if you are struggling financially, if you are really having a tough time in your marriage, or you're having a tough time taking care of your kids, this is really about your experience, and you are going to have to find out what works. You're going to have to tailor your new normal to that. So think about your perspective, think about expectations. I mean, for example, school districts are even having a eye opener about the fact that not all students have access to Wi-Fi at home, which is, that is something that maybe is expected, or having a computer in general. That's the sort of change when we think about after this, because this is all temporary. This is a structure for temporary circumstances. School districts can hopefully take this back and think, well, now when we are thinking about technology in the future, and how we integrate that with our students, that we can be considerate of those that maybe don't have those resources at home. But I would love to dive into some questions, and we do have one that we've had earlier before. Please feel free to add some questions if you are interested in doing that. But the very first one here is, I keep hearing that it's useful to set routines. Could you give me a rough idea of what a routine might look like for a family with a preschooler? I will say my heart goes out to you for a family with a preschooler. I know that routine is really difficult, especially when you have a child that needs a little bit more attention because they are younger. I would say first and foremost, the schedule doesn't need to be strict. I think we have a lot of expectations of what the day might look like, and you might be experiencing this yourself, is that we might be overthinking what it should be in comparison to what that might actually look like. So think about how a daycare might function throughout the day, and starting with nap times, activity time, play time. That's kind of what you would probably want to expect for living with your preschooler. I would say looking at meals and breaks, because that might be dependent on your work schedule. If you are working from home and if you're not working at this time, like those breaks and meals can certainly be a way to structure when you're going to have time for yourself, or going to have time to complete tasks that you need at this time. If you're a two-parent household, you can consider how much time you spend with the kids equally. Like I said, considering work schedules, maybe one parent is going to be focusing on this activity with the children at this time because they don't have meetings, and then you switch off in the afternoon, things of that nature. If you are a single parent, this could be a time where you lean on your support team to sort of see what times are available for grandma, grandpa to FaceTime with the preschooler, or, when there is screen time that is educational or something like that, really trying to focus on maybe what that might look like for you and your preschooler. So just to, put all of these things together, what this could look like, for example, is starting with waking up, of course, and eating breakfast. And it would be a good idea to change out of those PJs, and that includes you. That includes you getting out of those PJs, because it might help you sort of formulate things throughout your day. Getting those blocks of learning. We did get a question actually, and I do appreciate this. I'm going to take a pause here, but I wanted to say, for that example of the routine, is just really having those blocks of learning, blocks for the breaks, blocks for the meals. And I would say that's, especially with the preschooler, that's up until 1 p.m. And then kind of what happens after that, to maybe have one more goal for the rest of the day, but you don't want to sort of harp on having additional goals. And that could look like also including outside time. I want to stop right here and answer a question that we have received. Thank you so much for this question. It says, my 8-year-old and 5-year-old girls persistently fight over games and sharing. I try to give them more time out away from each other, but they both have severe emotional breakdowns. Any tips? Okay. Well, I mean, this is a lot of where those relationship building skills are going to make a difference here. Being 8 years old and 5 years old, they're fairly young. And so this is a time where they are spending a lot more time with each other. And there is the age difference that might play into part with, maybe 5-year-old wants to play with, a specific thing versus what the 8-year-old might want to play with. I think that continuing to try with the time and, not only away from each other, but time on the games, time with sharing, coming up with a schedule. I would say, well, this time we're going to be, my 8-year-old is going to be playing with the iPad. This is a good time to teach the 5-year-old. At this time is when you'll be able to play with the iPad. That could be really helpful. Is kind of those boundaries, and then thinking of some things that they can do together. There's lots of activities that they might be able to do with one another, whether that be art related or if that could be something educational and learning wise. With the severe emotional breakdowns, definitely having, or they really would want to feel supported by you, of course, and saying, I do hear you. I know that it's hard to share. I know that it's hard to not get the time that you want on the game. And that's understandable. So I would say starting there that can make them feel supported and feel good, and say, I'm encouraging you because this is a good time for you to spend with the 5-year-old or the 8-year-old and get along with each other. How can we do that together? Let's play something that includes both of you. The sharing can include that you both get something that you want to do at the same time. When they do have the emotional breakdowns, like I said, it's really going to be, I would say don't take those things as too personally. That's, why can't they get along? I can't believe this is not working. It's just, this is also a very particular time where it's hard because they might be spending a lot more time with each other than typically with their friends, especially with the age difference. So don't take too much to heart on that one. Okay. But I do have another question that I can go ahead and answer, and this is sort of talking about the new normal. I think this might be actually helpful in relation to the question that we got. But just if you are tuning in, I am Catherine Leach, and I'm with the Child Mind Institute. We're talking about sculpting your new normal. We've received some questions just about relationship building, and also talking to one another about how to set routines and placing some boundaries. So the question here that we received is, the new normal is not easy to explain to kids. How can my wife and I help our children understand why things are different without scaring them? I think this is a valid question because I talked about this in another Facebook Live where we talked about this being a traumatic experience for some kids. Now, I would start with some great resources that we already have on Child Mind Institute, on childmind.org, to talk about how to, discuss COVID-19 and just sort of the implications of that. And of course, considering those age level differences, maybe you're talking to a teenager versus you're talking to a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, someone, your child who's in the first grade will be very different. So I think that's important to see what they think things mean. You can also find out their thought patterns, or asking the question, well, what do you think is happening right now? Or what do you think is going on? Or like, what is your understanding? It could be a great way to see where they're at and follow your child's lead. Some may want to spend time talking about something, and other kids may not be so interested and may not have a lot of questions. Both of those are okay. So if your child is asking questions about, specifically, what if I get sick, or does this mean that I will get sick? We don't necessarily have to go into a conversation about that if they don't ask. And that could also help them not feel scared. So see where they're at. Follow your child's need. Focus on them, just the safety aspect. Focus on helping them feel safe and be truthful. So don't sugarcoat anything, but offering more detail of like what they want to know. And really reassuring them. I think what's helpful for me in talking to clients is we're discussing all the things that we're doing to really help. And I think that's a perspective change, and that can be a really great way to start. Is we're not stuck at home, right? What if we think of it as we're staying safe at home? We're actually playing a huge part in this. And of course, giving them the space to share their fears, never knock them down for that. But I think that it is good to sort of consider, well, here's actually what we're doing. The reason why restaurants had to close down is because we want to make sure that we're not spreading germs. That can actually make them feel safe. And continuing to say, like, a lot of people are keeping safe and keeping healthy in these ways. So I think that could be really helpful on that. We do have another question. Feel free to continue to add questions in this post, but we do have another question. If not, I'll be taking some more. Another question is, my husband and I need to find a way to connect with each other. We have a teenager and a younger child with special needs, and it's been very hard for us at this time. We're so tired. Before, we'd go on date night every week, but now we don't know how to find time to nurture our relationships. So I think that this is really a good question, because this is about parenting together. I think we have a lot, of resources and things going around about how to help with parenting, talking to children about things, helping our child. But really, we want to know how to really help and support each other, because you're leaning on each other to, support your kids. So I think I would start with knowing your resources, and specifically I'm thinking about your child with special needs. I think there's definitely resources out there with online support groups or online resources, and organizations that can help with how to parent with a child with special needs. And knowing your resources there, that could be a really helpful thing for your husband and you to look into, just because there could be some resources on how to manage that together and parenting, but also how you can help that in your talking to other couples and other married folks that are can have some good advice there too. I would say maybe your first line of defense would be communication. Being intentional about communication can be very helpful. I think, even having times where you can do a quick huddle. Hey, these are the priorities for today. I'd love for us to, have some time where we're spending together watching TV. Or let's cook together. Let's make sure we're eating together. I know that for the last couple of days you've been eating while working. Here's another way that we can do this. We can eat together. We can do this activity. Maybe that walk. Maybe there is, the family walk, and the kids may be walking right in front of you while you are able to have a conversation right behind them. And have to talk about your fears and talk about frustrations. Letting down at the end of the day with each other can help you feel more supported and connected. And I think really to what kind of goes hand in hand with this is that self-care. So we can tend to rely sometimes on our partners, like, I want you to listen to me and this is how I feel, which is great to have the support, but also sometimes we might be needing to take care of ourselves. We are not a failure for not being able to take care of ourselves, or thinking about how our spouse may not be taking care of themselves. Just keeping those things in mind. And it's nice in extreme circumstances, I think, to think about the reality is that I think we might have assumed, hey, more time together, this means that we can be more romantic and we're going to be each other's support all the time. Things are just going to be so lovely. That time that we didn't have together before, now we have it. That we don't want to have unrealistic expectations, and that can cause some negativity that will allow you to maybe instead, and what you might have been expecting your mind is you turn toward each other. You might be turning on each other if you decide to have those unrealistic expectations. We do have another question. This will be our last question for today. And it says, do you have any suggestions for how I can help my 7-year-old if she doesn't want to video chat? She only likes real life interactions. That's a great question. Thank you for asking this, because I like real life interactions as well. I think you can also relate to that. Here's the thing. I think that easing her into some video chats might help because of just limitations on seeing friends, and even grandparents if that's the case too. Since she's 7 years old, I would definitely consider maybe starting with I've noticed that some parents, things like that, have done what you just even going by the window. I'm thinking of some neighbors that I've seen where they talk across the street from one another. That could be helpful if you have some neighbors that you are typically closer to. I know that with grandparents and making sure that we stay safe, some have even just interacted through the window. And like I said, this could be a great way to go back to those. How are we helping, keeping grandma and grandpa safe? How are we helping keeping our friends safe? We do these things so that we can, still see them and engage with them. And it's just a different sort of way of doing that now. And conceptualizing that and helping your 7-year-old realize that this is what we're doing temporarily is, a good way to start, and saying, here's how we can maybe ease into more so video chats. Because we think that might be helpful. But I think that we can start there. Lots of resources, like I said, online on how to speak with your child about these things. And hopefully that can mean that you can do that together. So what I would like to do now is I want to say thank you for joining me today. I hope that this was helpful. Remember that we're here at 10 a.m. And 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we look through your questions daily, so keep posting those even if I wasn't able to get to you at this time. Check the post for, the topic for our next Facebook Live, as well as any of our resources online. The Child Mind Institute is here to help with mental health and parenting needs during this COVID-19 crisis, no matter where you are. So our resources are online, from daily tips to consultations, gold standard mental health or telehealth treatments, and you can go to childmind.org/coronavirus to check those out. I wish you health and safety at this time. Thank you for joining me, and have a good rest of your Tuesday.